And I'm going to go to speaker view, which means whoever's speaking will be at least on my screen. I guess we each control our own screen, but my screen, I presume, is the one that affects the recording, that the recording will pick up. So I want to say that I've got a list of reading. My computer decided to make it very clear to me who was boss this week. And so only by essentially acknowledging that it was boss did I finally get it fixed up to where I'm able to do this today. And to where, but there's some tapes coming and there's a reading list coming. But I left last class concerned that about the issue of morale. I was, it seems to me that the question is, talking about the paradigm is intended to be helpful, not demoralizing or depressing. And I left the last class sort of concerned whether it had, particularly when we talk about economics and the scope of the entrenchment of the problem in the economic system, whether it left people demoralized, and which I'm going to ask you guys about, but I want to say a little bit first. And this class is intended to offer sustenance and support and encouragement for everyone. And I want to explain what the purpose of talking about the paradigm is, but with an understanding that paradigm is a clunky structure. Let me get this off. That the paradigm is a clunky structure, and it's a massive intellectual generalization, and therefore a simplification. And this has come up a number of times in class where people have said, well, what about all these positive things that are happening? And to which we keep saying, no, the new paradigm is born within and from the old paradigm at every historical stage. But so the intention of offering the paradigm is two things. One, sort of to offer orientation, sort of, you've seen these maps where it says you are here. It's sort of intended to be you are here, we are here, this is where we are, with the idea that having clarity about that and being oriented about that is actually good for us. But having clarity what the issue is helps us, rather than having sort of a generalized sense of, man, everything's messed up. So to try and define it and be clear. And especially so that, and talking about how it operates in the various realms of our life is intended to be helpful in going like, oh, there it is again. Someone just told me to control my kid better. Oh, there it is again. Someone just told me, so when on these different levels, as we experience the things that just don't feel right or that are difficult for us, to go like, that's it, that's the same thing. And that we can learn and get clear on how to defend, protect, and make change on all of those levels. So we're not disarmed on all those levels, and not just confused and disoriented and feel like it's, that it is coming at us from all sides, but so we see what's coming at us from all sides is essentially the same error that our culture makes in different realms, as well as the fact that doesn't define everything that we do or everything that we believe, because there's a strong, always has been throughout history, but there's a strong strong energy of counter values that are being born within it. It's also meant to be encouraging in the sense that it's meant to be inclusive which is to say that we can play a part. We can be oriented and see our place in all of this, and we can play a part at every one of the levels. We can do it by being a good neighbor, by taking care of our grandchildren or our children, by raising our children in a better way, by being a teacher, by being a healthcare worker, by being a politician, by writing laws, by marching. But that every one of those things, every way that we express a different way of living, and by that I mean a way of living that is founded on the understanding that we're all in this together, and that the hole in the other guy's side of the boat is our problem. Whenever we live our life in that way, we are contributing and part of the transformation that needs to happen. So, which sort of brings up the question of when does sort of clarifying and recognizing the scale of the problem, when is that demoralizing, paralyzing, or when is it energizing? When does it help us know where we are and know what we believe and find our way to contribute to the welfare of the whole? And so that's what brought me to have this class be sort of a step back and let's look at the morale issue. We will then go on with the slightly changed structure for the rest of the class, which was, we did one that was sort of an introduction to the issues, one that was first class, second class was sort of an outline of the basic concepts of the class and structure of the class. Third class was individual psychological development, how narcissists are created and how to heal narcissism. The last class, the fourth one, was on the economic system. Today is this kind of regroup and let's look at morale. The sixth class will be on the human brain, the structure and evolution of the human brain and how that affects our individual and social behavior. And the eighth class will be on the issue of science and spirituality, the relationship of those. And then we'll have a class or two left to see what loose ends we want to tie up. So let me open it up a little bit. And so the question is, so far, has this been demoralizing or helpful? And if so, what do we need to do so that the energizing forces, the energizing part at least keeps up with the sense of how large the problem is. So that's my question. I could use some feedback on that. Hi, Peter. Peter just joined us.
Hi.
Love to see your face when you have a chance. If you're chewing, it's okay. Some of us are. There he is. So that's my question. After last class, talking about the economic system, did you feel heavier or energized or supported? Quinn, you unmuted yourself.
Yes, I was chewing.
Well, then I'll swallow.
Well, I'll talk a little bit. I was neither, frankly, in that I guess there is an element, of course, to economic issues, but I was looking more at human rights kinds of things and looking at things that had nothing to do with economics, like looking at Syria and what Syria did, and looking at what's going on in Afghanistan, and then looking what goes on for women in some of these countries like India, where the little girls are in brothels as we speak. And I was looking at things, and yes, it does have something to do with economics, but when I look at world things, I guess I look at things on a more personal than theoretical, like the theory of economics. Of course, poverty is everywhere, but I look at the different human rights things that go on and the atrocities that go on. Then I'm overwhelmed. I'm totally overwhelmed. And I find myself pulling back and saying, well, what can I do in Ashland to make somebody's life better? Because looking at something globally is just, and with technology, we get to know global information at the fingertip. So I think it's very easy to get and stay overwhelmed. That's why I don't do much technology. Don't do any news and whatnot. It's too overwhelming.
Okay. I mean,
I still watch,
go ahead. Yeah.
I do watch the news, and I am totally done in by what's happening in our country. I don't need to worry about Syria and Afghanistan at this point, because what's happening here is just mind blowing. I mean, up is down and down is up, and we have some maniac running around to influencing everybody to say that, we don't have the proper governance, and refusing to acknowledge Biden, and just what is going on in our country. I feel like it is one man has been able to come in and destroy so much of our institutions, and going after people. The only reason he wants to run in 2024 is vengeance. Vengeance. That's a governing principle. I mean, I'm just sick about what's going on in our country. I can't say that your class last week brought me up or brought me down. I'm just trying to absorb what's going on every day in this country. And I do feel like our democracy is totally at risk, and violence is everywhere. You can't be a healthcare worker. You can't be on a school board. You can't be an election worker without people threatening you. I mean, what is this? Where did we get to this point? How did we get to this point?
Yeah. Yeah. There is just a little bit on the economics. The economic system entrenchment, the entrenchment of power in the economic system really does depend on keeping people fighting against each other, preventing the large majority of people to make coalitions that would make change. So it has to separate. To stay in power, it's compelled to separate and scapegoat and set us against each other. And I think it's a little similar to, when Hitler came in, I don't think Trump's going to take over in the way that Hitler did, by the way, but when Hitler came in, the German industrialists said, the guy's crazy, but he's a nut, but he's our nut, and we can use him. And I think that's largely, at first the establishment said, oh my God, this guy's crazy. But at some point they said, well, if he's going to cut corporate taxes, and if he's going to basically do the corporate agenda, and cut labor regulations, and cut environmental regulations, and blah blah blah, privatize everything. What the hell? So he's a nut, and we'll just take take this ride as long as it works. So that, so, you know, I think the economic system, that's why, you know, I'm saying these are all part of one thing. There isn't just one nut who came up. This nut was able to do, this deeply damaged person was able to do what he did because it served various kinds of interests, and we were blah, blah, you know. So, okay. Anybody else want to say something on this, or I could move on? And I've got some other questions I'm interested in getting responses to from you guys.
Oh, I would agree with you that basically he's our guy. He may be, as a matter of fact, I think a lot of them in private were saying exactly that. They weren't coming out in public and saying he was cuckoo, but certainly behind closed doors, there was lots of talk that Republicans really didn't care for him.
Sure.
And
which they kept expressing by, we wish he wouldn't say these things. They never said, we wished he didn't think these things or believe these things. We just wished he wouldn't say these things. Doesn't he know that we don't say this stuff?
yes, exactly.
Which was part of the hope that he would become presidential.
Was the short difference between his and his mouth.
Yeah.
But
right. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the issue comes down to a shift in consciousness, period. And that for me had to do with a sense of connection with feeling part of the earth, feeling energy, feeling spirit, connecting with one another. I think whenever I see in the newspaper somebody being called names, I know that that's the end of discussion and the beginning of war. It's inevitable because you're not being heard, you're being labeled. And the other person is too, it just isn't on one side, it goes both ways.
Yeah. All right. So I want to talk a little more. So this is, I'm still on the issue of being, of sustaining ourselves, of hope and sustaining ourselves. So I think one of the gifts of our species is that we are wired to be able to imagine realities, to not just receive reality, but to imagine how it could be different and try to do something to make it more, make it different. And I think that's the key to our creativity as a species. And Sartre was one of the first people who talked about that human beings can see not only what is, but what isn't. So that ability to imagine things different than they are and to do goal-oriented behavior in order, and intentional behavior in order to create change is what's made us, for better or for worse, but partly for better, co-creators of our reality in a different way. Everything that lives is a co-creator of reality, even if it just is leaving calcium on the seafloor for the next generation to build their shells out of. But that our conscious imagination, that we can, through our conscious imagination, create intentions and create change, and that makes us co-creators of the world in a very special way as a species. And I think that is our gift. The downside of that gift is that it can be inflated, that our notion of what, you know, the change we want to make may or may not be one that's humbly in keeping with the welfare of the whole. But we can also feel burdened or despairing because we think we ought to make change, and can we? And if we can't make it better, then we can feel really burdened by that. And it can be difficult for us to sort of receive support. So we're a species that has a difficulty with living with, I think, intrinsically the limits of our power, the limits of our ability to make change. And so we're dealing with the having what would be a healthy, a non-hubristic, but a healthy balance of responsibility and surrender. How do we surrender and accept the limits of our power and accept life as it's offered to us? And how do we take responsibility for our full membership in life and how it is moving? Anybody want to say something about that? Or how you work, you know, the proper balance between responsibility and surrender as you experience it? How do you negotiate that?
You certainly ask the hard ones.
Good.
True, false. Yeah, well.
Well,
In
can
how
you
many words are
rhapsodize
left?
on? Can you rhapsodize on that?
Yeah. In how many words or less on this? Yeah, how many words or less? That's a hard one, boy.
Well, for instance, you talked about you know, you suffer when you hear about things going on in the
Right.
world. Where's that useful? You know, because it helps you to
Motivate.
be
Helps me
motivated.
motivate.
And where is it just crushing? One
Well,
of the things someone mentioned was
sometimes
that
sometimes that feels like a fine line, and sometimes it feels like a broad stroke. But I think with this responsibility versus surrender, it feels like there are many areas where where I am forced to surrender, you know, where I have no choice. This is how it is, or this is how it is with a huge consequence. So there is that choice if I want to pay that consequence. And I think, you know, one of the first things that I must do is take full responsibility for my own life, every aspect, every bit, every whatever. I do believe that I have created my own life, and even the things I don't like to have happened, like physical health and accidents and whatever, I do believe I've called them in. But I don't know where to go from here with this, but I think that's the essential. It has to start, is we all have to realize that we have all created what we have. Me with my own personal life and business and whatnot, to creating the world that is out there. I am 1/1,000,000th responsible for it. It is certainly my responsibility for the stuff that's happening.
and what would that move you to do? For, you know,
Well, in terms of, for example, environmental things, I do this little thing, and I do this little thing, and this little thing, and this little thing that
yeah.
I feel I can do, you know, from financial to actions on my own, to do this and that, and don't buy like that, and don't do this, don't do this, but do this. So those kinds of things on a, you know, little personal level. I'm not sure on a bigger level. It's, I mean, in terms for me, I have picked particular things that I do service with and do what I can outside of my own little world to do a little bit bigger things.
Yeah. And that helps. That feels good for you.
Yes,
That-
it does.
yeah.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, financially and action wise,
Yeah.
doing my part, I feel. In the issue I feel the most strongly about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that helps
I would,
with the potential for despair or whatever you want to call it. or
Exactly.
overwhelm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just try to be a good citizen
Mhm,
of this country.
mhm.
And that means money and time and support,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
things that make.
And that's, I noticed that when Quinn was talking about issues in the whole world, he was saying part of how you help yourself not be overwhelmed is to say this is, as you know, being a citizen of this country, is that if I can do that well, then I feel like I'm doing a part that's important, that's significant.
It helps.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little more about, this is sort of how I try to situate myself with this. And it starts with the fact that we human beings didn't create the human experiment. It wasn't our idea. Nature did. Nature produced the human experiment. And we are children of nature's process, just as much as
Mhm.
the eagles and the slime mold and the squirrels and the birds and the geese and the mushrooms and everything else. We're a product of our species' ancient dialogue with the rest of existence, dialogue with nature. And in that process, we had to learn something about how to belong, or we would already not be here. So one of the things I tell myself is that it is not our job to be judges and juries of the human experiment, to decide whether it's a good idea or a bad idea that humans existed. I know a lot of people say, well, if we just disappeared, everything would be great. But I don't think it's to make that judgment is not ours to make. I think that judgment is way above our pay grade. And that nature's going to decide if we are or are not useful members of nature and useful tools in nature's learning process, whether we have a useful part to play in nature's learning process. And then we will, you know, it will either decide we are or we're not. And nature will go on with or without us. If we go, we will take with us much that we love, and we have every reason to feel grief about that. But something will go on. And so I want to say that both there's a touch that doesn't seem like it, but there's hubris in both the notion that we're too good for and that we're not good enough for the rest of nature. So it's obvious in the case of, God created the world for us to rule over and use for our own purposes, and at best manage, and it's all there for us. So that there's obvious hubris in that, and there's been an obvious terrible cost of that hubris. But I think there's also a hubris in saying we are the special poison seed, we're nature's orphan, we're the ungrateful matricidal child that nature's going to spit out. There's something in that is also hubristic in a subtler way. And that both of those views, that we're too good for the rest of existence or not good enough for it, underestimate the degree to which we are simply humble members of nature's search, of nature's process of growth and healing and development. And if that's true, then our job is a little easier. Then our job is simply to give the human experiment its best shot. Not to decide whether it's a good thing that there is a human experiment, but we'll just be the best example of it that we can be. Which is to say, to be humble and useful part of nature's process. And that takes us back to the sort of core notion of this class, which is belonging and membership. That our job is to experience our belonging and our membership in the whole, and to be responsible and engaged members of existence. And that nature, and I want to say that nature, and we'll talk more about this as we talk about evolution more, and the evolution of pro-social human instincts. But how I summarize what nature has left us with is a profound need, and I've said this, I will keep saying this over and over again, because this is sort of the essence of what I take from looking at that. A profound instinctual need to experience ourselves and to be empowered, contributing, respected members of a meaningful whole that is worthy of our allegiance and that is ultimately sacred. To be an empowered, respected, contributing member of a meaningful whole that's worthy of our allegiance and that's ultimately sacred. And when we experience ourselves in that way, we are happy and healthy.
Yep.
And when we don't, we are sick, unhealthy, alienated, angry, dangerous.
Yeah.
So this is an internal guide that the evolutionary process that nature has given us. This is an eternal guide, an eternal moral compass that is available to us. And life, when we are in touch with that, life will be happy. Well, let's say will be, I don't mean happy, but life will be satisfying and meaningful and healthy. We will experience life in that way. And so if that's true, then the goal, right? We said that as a species, we're goal-oriented. We want to be proactive towards some goal that we imagine. Then the goal isn't that it's our job to save the world, and then we feel good if we think we can, and we feel bad if we can't. Then our goal is simply belonging and membership, being engaged as a member of life, being an engaged member of life, being a vehicle of life, letting nature express itself through us, and letting ourselves be nurtured and fueled and guided by nature and the instinctual apparatus that and biological apparatus that connects us and offers us our membership in nature. And the other piece of that is, and now this is about, we tend to see things as fixed. This is what it is, and this is what it isn't. But we're embedded in a universal learning process. Nature is a universal learning process in which growth and change is inherent. The universe is a learning process, and change and learning is at the core of that process. And that happens on the level of evolution, happens on the level of history and culture and paradigms, happens on the level of individual development. It is built into the process of nature, change and growth and learning and transition. Life, death, renewal, life, death, renewal. The cycle, that cycle is the essence and the rhythm of natural processes. So what we get is not the ability, we'll say, oh, I want to leave the world a better place than I came into it, which is our finest instinct, I think. But it's also, what we get is we get a watch. This is our watch. We get a turn, one watch, one turn. And our job is to do that watch and that turn in a way that feels ultimately satisfying and responsible to us, feels to us that we have done a good, we've done an honorable watch. Now, another way to look at that is the nature of earthly time. And this is one of the ways of looking at that is time is cyclical. The seasons happen over and over and over again. Or we have our, different years of our life. And time has an arrow. Time is linear. If you put that together, what you get is a spiral. And in that spiral, every cycle is a repetition, and every spiral is new. Is this making sense? This image, this spiral? So a spiral is cycles, but it's also has a direction of change. So the fourth cycle is not the same as the first cycle. It is much the same because it's a cycle, but the cycle will never repeat again. Every cycle is new. Every cycle is unique. And so that you have this pattern of stability and repetition on the one hand, and constant change on the other. And what I think is that this is the universe's learning process. Every cycle is a potential do-over. Every cycle will have inherent in it what we've already learned and what we know. And every cycle is a new opportunity. So the learning cycle of nature offers us a constant series of do-overs, of constant opportunities to learn and change, and constant opportunities for rebirth and healing. And that nature's healing process is essentially nature's love for what is wounded and imperfect. When you cut your hand, it heals. And that's nature's way of taking care of the wound. So nature, the constant process of healing and rebirth that is in nature is part of, could be looked at as nature's love for what is wounded and in need. And that puts us in the particular position that it's our, it's very easy to say, my God, there used to be buffalo as far as the eye could see. There used to be pigeons as far as the eye could see. I've heard that someone told me that a squirrel could have gone from Georgia to Maine without ever hitting the ground, just jumping from tree to tree. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Wow.
So we have every right and reason to mourn the plenty that's been lost, but our place and our moment in history is to love, respect, and heal a wounded and imperfect nature, a wounded and imperfect culture and our personal wounded and imperfect selves. And in doing that, we have the whole power of nature and of life behind us. I remember when I was an activist in the 60s and 70s, the feeling that sort of the winds of history were at my back. Some of that was just my youth, and some of it was the times. And I know, how startling it is to feel, it's much harder to feel that at this moment, in some of the ways that Dickie said so eloquently, I'm like, what's happened to my country? But on the larger picture, I think that's still true. The winds of life are at our back and and when we operate in a pro-life way, not in the abortion issue lingo, but in a different lingo, when we operate pro-life on the side of life, we do have the power of life at our back. And so that brings us then to how do we access, how do we manifest and harness that life, whatever you want to call it, life energy, life force. How do we harness that so that we can become vehicles of life, vehicles of nature? And then we're not creating and exhausting ourselves in an effort to struggle and create from ourselves change on a level that we don't have the personal power to do, but we are operating in membership of processes that are way beyond us, but that we can have a pretty good idea of when we are contributing to it and when we're not. So that's kind of the end of my wrap. And then I want to shift from that to some experiential stuff to help us with that. How do we access this? How do we experience ourselves at our full membership?
Well,
But let's
Bob,
do a little
before
talking there. Yeah.
Yeah, would you repeat the definition you gave? You had like
Yeah.
4, 5
Yeah.
lines about a person that's engaged. I couldn't get it down,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
really like that.
Oh, you even the membership. Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
It's right in the beginning. You said somebody has to be engaged and this and that and the other.
Yeah. I think we have a deep instinctual hunger, desire, and yearning and impetus towards we want to be and empowered, respected, contributing member.
Respected,
I'll go slow. Empowered, respected, contributing member of a meaningful whole. Which is worthy of our allegiance.
Yeah, it's the one. This is it.
Of a meaningful whole, which is worthy of our allegiance.
Of our, yeah.
By going slow, I lost it a little bit. I'll say it again from the beginning.
Is worthy of our
we want to be
allegiance.
empowered, responsible. I don't know if I used respond, but empowered, responsible, contributing, respected members of a meaningful whole that is worthy of our allegiance and that is ultimately sacred. Whatever that means.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I think, and to answer your question, with this is, I think a lot of people do not experience themselves as this. And I
Absolutely.
think the wind at their back is kind of weak as a result.
Yeah.
That
Fantastic.
I mean, I'm working. I'm a therapist, and I still work. And I'm meeting a lot of people, especially since COVID, but even prior to COVID, I read statistics about how many people live alone and have lived alone for years. So, I don't know that they're feeling part of any whole. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I think the further we are from this definition, the weaker the wind in our backs.
I love the way you put that together.
We have, pardon?
I love the way you put those two things together. The wind that, yes.
Yeah, well, the less likely you are, to be a happy, although I don't like the word, to be a content person with some ups and downs in life, but basically content, and feel that this is what it is. I love this because I think this is what it is. And I don't know a lot of people, frankly, that do this. That do this, are this, whatever.
Mhm.
But, they'll look at maybe one little part and say, well, yeah, I'm a member of something. I'm a member of my church. And I don't feel that a lot of folks get to be this. They don't get to be this.
That's right. And so I think that
Yeah.
so actually this whole thing about the narcissistic paradigm is intended as an explanation of why this experience is hard to come by in our culture. Why our economic system, our political system, our cultural system, how we raise our kids, how blah, 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 that the way that we are not offered this very, very much. And therefore it's easy to be depressed and hopeless and angry and lonely and sick and unhealthy. Yeah. And it also explains, I think, which is a slightly different conversation that I want to save for another time a little more, but I think the vulnerability of people who follow demagogues, follow narcissistic leaders, their vulnerability to those leaders is because they don't have a genuine version of what we just talked about. And so then they are very vulnerable to what I would call faux belonging. It's faux belonging because you're not really empowered within it. But but we'll do a piece on that. But okay, so and my God, I don't know, 99.99% of human evolution and pre-human evolution was in tribes where we knew each other and we were known in it and we had our place in it and we had our useful role in it. So and our ability to connect with each other, to make connections with each other, to be individuals who recognize to be unique individuals who also recognize other unique individuals and have relationships where we are both ourselves and part of a meaningful whole. I think that's been the human experience for most of our existence on this planet. And we are right now in a rapidly unfolding experiment in which we've lost a lot of that. Doesn't mean but we keep creating it. I mean, that the hunger for that means that we're always and often in positive ways looking for it and creating it.
Well, and I think add to the idea of a narcissistic foundation and add the values that our culture holds around consumerism and materialism,
Mm-hmm.
and add, I had one more, but, technology, and add technology
Yeah.
Mm.
What do we, look at what we're, look at what, how do we get this? How
Yeah.
do we get the thing we're talking about with
Right.
those distractions and those addictions? Really, all of those are addictions as far as I'm concerned, except narcissism, which is a personality disorder. But they're addictions. And we're so swayed by the technology, consumerism, etc. No wonder, you know, people really don't get this. Don't get the thing you said, you know? That's what I see.
Yeah, so this is an and, not a but, because I also, like, I'm pretty much of a technophobe, which is largely based on being techno ignorant. But boy, I have found Zoom to be a powerful tool for people connecting. You know, and people connecting on a scale and in a way that that wouldn't be possible without it. So, you know,
I'm not saying all technology, but
right.
I see kids sitting at a table at a restaurant doing this when there's a guest there. The two of them are sitting there and they're both on their phones. It's like they're not interacting at all.
And so I agree with that, but also they share it. I mean, when I see my son and his friends, and they look at stuff and they share it, and they look and they say, "Oh, look what I found!" And some of the stuff they share is really interesting and valuable stuff that's available to them that otherwise wouldn't be. You know, so my son just sent me a little TED talk or something about managing anxiety, and that's something I'm supposed to know a lot about. And guess what? It was like, whoa, I hadn't quite looked at it that, you know. So there's a rich sharing that also can happen. So, but I don't, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing's 100%. I do see the pros of it, but I see both sides, because I certainly use technology a lot, but it doesn't keep me from interacting with people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree.
Right. I have a question. Maybe think if I want to say that before or after the little experiential piece. Well, I'm just going to raise the question, and then I'm going to not necessarily, and then if someone's moved to say something, but just have it in the air. What if we really pay attention to those experiences that remind us of our membership? The things in the world that flirt with us, you know, that catch our attention, the smile of a kid playing, or leaves blowing in the wind, whatever it is, the things that catch us, and we get this little sense of, you know, the places where we get reminded of our membership. And then the next piece would be, and that's what we're going to shift to now, how do we cultivate our openness to that? Because if I'm walking down the street and I'm completely figuring out whatever I think the next important problem is that I'm supposed to solve in my life, it's very easy to not have an open and receptive and interactive relationship with the world around me. So how do we cultivate that? So I want to shift to an experiential piece, and then we can talk about that afterwards if we want. Should we take a quick break or not? Who would like, anybody want to do a 5-minute break? Okay, and the last time this happened, someone said, well, do you want a break, Bob? And the answer is yes, I want a 3-minute break.
Go ahead.
And I remember being relieved that I could base it on my needs and not pretend that I was only caring about everybody else's. So I'm going to take a 3-minute break. Okay. All right, now we're recording, and now I will. There we go. Now if I can push shared screen. Ay, ay, ay. Ah. Yes, you can see that now?
No,
No?
You see part of it.
No,
Yeah, you
There
don't
we
have
go.
the poem Wild Geese up? I know it's not all on the screen.
we
at
do
once.
now, yes.
we do
Okay.
now.
Okay,
The
So,
top part of it.
I know. I'll have to scroll down it as I read it. I'm gonna read it, and but this is sort of an introduction to the no fuss, no muss notion of grounding or meditation or whatever you want to call it. So it's called Wild Geese. It may be familiar. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100-year miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers.
I knew it
Meanwhile,
was Mary.
the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
Great.
So in that spirit, that it's there, it's always there, this access to life within you, and not something far away or that you have to live in a cave for a year to find. It's kind of the spirit that I want to offer what I offer. So
That's-
get yourself in some relatively comfortable position.
Would you send that out, Bob?
Yeah, I will. And so we're choosing here to bring our attention to the experience, the literal experience of life within ourselves, and to take a break from the part of us that is worried and focused on making sure we take care of business and remember the things that are on our to-do list. We'll express our gratitude to that part of us. We need it. We'll be back. But right now, we're taking a vacation from that. And right now, we're making the choice to bring our attention to our experience of life within us and around us. So I'm going to invite you to get quiet and listen to what is it in your body that tells you with absolute certainty that you are a living thing and not a marble statue of yourself. Not some theory, but how do you experience that? How do you experience the processes of life within you? And that may be a tingling or a warmth or an energy. It may be a deep quiet that involves you bringing exquisite attention to some little spring or sprig of life popping up in the desert. You may experience it as a powerful storm rushing through your body. However you experience it is how you are experiencing life within you at this moment. It will shift. It may shift in the process of giving it your attention. But you're giving your loving attention to your experience of life within you. And this is not some extrasensory other spiritual realm separate from life. We're talking about the literal processes of life within your body and how to experience it. There is a campfire burning in the mitochondria of every cell in your body. There are rivers of blood and rivulets and trickles reaching every cell of your body and bringing oxygen and nutrients to that cell and removing and taking away the used up stuff, clearing it. There is an infinitely fine neural network that reaches every corner of your being and connects every corner of your being. And there are electrical currents and pathways that run through that system and connect you up. There are electrical waves and storms and rhythms and pulsations that run through those nerve systems. There are winds and washes of hormones and from your lymphatic system that wash over and bathe every part of your physical being. And there is forever and always, starting from when you were in the womb, a steady drumbeat of your heart, like a drum in the jungle, that is the underlying rhythm of your every moment of your life. And what you are experiencing is how the life force is manifesting itself in you at this moment. And this is the spigot. This is the place of immersion of the life force. This is the manifestation of the life force, that it is your special opportunity and responsibility to steward, to nurture, to love, to care for. But it is also the place where nature fuels and supports, and it expresses itself in your existence. And in that way, it is your connection to the life force outside of your skin, outside of your body, that animates everything and that offers and manifests itself to you. And if you can be in connection to that force, you don't have to create your energy through a struggle of your will, but this is the wind at your back. This is the energy that you can ride and that can animate you, that you can be a member of and a manifestation of. And what you do get to do is this spigot there's a sort of nozzle on this hose, and you get to point it and aim it, this life energy, or you get to aim that part of it wherever it feels right to you. But this is your experience of your membership in the whole. Not right now, but when I'll tell you in a minute, right? But soon, but not right now. I'm going to invite you to open your eyes and look for something. Could be out, if you're at a window, it could be a tree or something beautiful outside, but it can also be an object that means something to you in your environment. It may be something that's not special. But I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and look at that object and offer it your witnessing. And I'll guide you through that in a moment. So when you're ready, open your eyes. Start with a soft focus. Keep your connection to yourself and find something out there that's worthy of your attention right now. That invites your attention. And as you witness it, we've been focusing on witnessing yourself. As you witness it, allow the life within you to resonate with that object and to give it your full witnessing, to allow that object to offer itself to you, and allow yourself to be transparent to what you're looking at. And if it's not an object, it could be just a whole scene. Allow yourself to be transparent to existence outside of you and to experience the resonance of life in you and life outside you. And then allow yourself to be witnessed by what's outside you. Allow what's outside you to witness you. And see what does it feel like if you see yourself as also being witnessed by the world outside you. That you are not alone in this world. And when you're ready, bring your attention back into the room and to this fine company of human beings that you're spending this hour and a half with. Anybody want to share? We don't need to. That's fine to, if silence is the best way to absorb this, that's fine. But if anybody wants to share something about this experience, it would be interesting to me.
I'll share, Bob. This
Yeah.
is part of my daily ritual of knowing that I'm part of the lungs of nature. One of my morning meditation is to breathe in a loving way with the plants, to thank them for my breath, and to send them my breath because we are synchronous. We breathe with one another. And to thank the plants for everything that they provide, my clothes, my medicine, my food, my breath. And I know I belong here, just as they belong here with me. We complement one another.
So
it's kind of really a daily celebration, really, for me.
Cool. Anyone else?
This was the object that I picked.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like she was listening to you. And when you said, allow yourself to be viewed, she just really stared at me. She was very cooperative during our thing.
Who could
I
not?
have to go. Thank you, guys. I have to leave.
Okay.
Okay.
Who could not resonate with this creature?
Yeah. She goes to work with me every day. And she works with me.
So we're just about out of time. I'm gonna suggest some homework. And the homework is,
Okay.
to intentionally spend half an hour or something like that a few times this week, where you are actually making yourself transparent to the world and seeing what flirts with you. Seeing
Okay.
what catches your attention. Well, you can notice what flirts with you anytime and then give it that attention. But spend half an hour where you are consciously being as transparent as you can to life in the world around it, and to letting it into you, and to sharing a witnessing, where first you are witnessing the world, but then you shift it and allow the world to witness you back, so that you're actually in a conversation or a dialogue with the world. You may find that you want to put words to that. What's the tree saying to you? But you may not need to do anything like that at all. And one way to do the witnessing can be to do a movement. So you may be looking at a tree and relating to it, and it may make you want to just see if there's something that wants to happen in your body that's part of your dialogue or your witnessing. And then allow that tree or whatever it is to witness you back. So I want you maybe 3 times this week do that consciously, and see what happens, and see if it's allows you to experience your membership with existence in a more alert way. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you all. And
thank you.
yeah. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.